a chorus of birdsong and camera shutters this morning. But storm clouds are on the horizon this week as a beleaguered Theresa May tries to convince Parliament to pass her withdrawal agreement bill. And today, the collapse of her political capital was displayed in black and white. A Prime Minister writing for a national newspaper usually makes front-page headlines. What Mrs May had to sell today was relegated to page 21 in the bottom corner. A bold offer to get the withdrawal agreement bill through Parliament, she promised. No detail, though, did she deliver. Workers' rights and the environment are the key areas of give, says Cabinet Minister Rory Stewart. And if that isn't enough for Parliament, he says the alternative could be no Brexit.
There's definitely no guarantee of any of this, and after 2.5 years it would be very arrogant to say there's any guarantee. But I believe the way to resolve this has got to be in Parliament. The idea that you can somehow go back to Brussels and negotiate some brand new deal that nobody's ever thought of is unrealistic. And if anybody were to try, I'm afraid they would fail. We can only crack this in Parliament. And the question to members of Parliament is, do you or do you not want Brexit?
There is one bold new offer Theresa May could make, though, that would guarantee Lib Dem support.
If the government comes back to Parliament with a withdrawal bill, which is linked to a confirmatory referendum, we and many other people will support it so we can move on and resolve this issue, which is bringing the country to a complete halt.
It's not another vote we need, say Change UK, but a complete halt on the process altogether.
We are staring the national disaster of no deal in the face because the runners and riders for the Tory leadership contest, which has already started, are falling over themselves to commit to taking us out, come what may, on the 31st of October. And that's why we're saying this morning that we are going to need to revoke Article 50 in order to stop the clock, to give us time to refer this back to people and to resolve this mess.
Theresa May has just over 2 weeks before her withdrawal agreement bill comes before Parliament, and MPs decide if what she now has to offer really is that bold or new after all.
Paul McNamara and Lord Hazleton, who served as a minister under 3 different Conservative premiers over a 25-year time span, joins me now from Oxfordshire. Thanks for coming on the programme. For someone like you, the quintessential Tory grandee, to say you're going to vote for the Lib Dems in these Euro elections, I mean, that's something I never thought I would see.
Well, it's something I never thought I would say, but of course you have to look at who I'm voting for. I'm voting for a candidate who was a Conservative member of the European Parliament, who believes, as I believe, and as the Tory governments I worked for believed, that our future is in Europe. He was forced out of the Conservative Party by the extreme element that's got us into this mess, and he's standing as a Lib Dem, so I'm going to vote for him. I'm going to lend him my support. And I think that all over the country, people are looking to see who they can support, who has the best chance of representing the Remain campaign. The country is paralyzed.
So is this a protest vote?
It's not a protest vote, it is a positive vote in the context of the European elections for the European Parliament. I want somebody in that Parliament who believes that they should stay there and work for Britain's national self-interest. I don't want someone who's going to go there and bellyache and alienate everybody else by simply moaning on the touchlines.
Why didn't you resign the Tory party whip?
Because I am a Tory.
But you don't feel you belong to this party anymore. You've called them extremists.
No, not at all. I do belong to the Conservative Party. I fought as many frontline battles on behalf of the Tory party as anybody around in today's political world. And I was an enthusiastic member of the Conservative Party from 1951 under Winston Churchill, when the European movement gained its ascendancy and Britain became part of it. So if you're saying to me, because a group of right-wing Tories are now in the ascendancy, that I have to leave the party and I have to change, or I have to change my mind, well, you've got the wrong guy. I believe that if you believe strongly enough in the national interest and in your own integrity, you stand and fight. You don't run away.
We've got one of those Tories in the studio, and we'll be speaking to him a little bit later. He is calling on you to get sacked, from Tory ranks. What do you say to him?
Well, look, they can sack me. indeed, Theresa May did sack me when I voted that Parliament should be given an affirmative vote in the House of Lords, and she did sack me. Of course, within a matter of weeks, she'd been forced to change her mind, and Parliament did get an affirmative vote. But if they sack me, I don't want to exaggerate this, but there are large numbers of Conservatives, 5 million, who voted to remain, and they'll get the message. The party has to reunite. It has to become a one-nation party to win, to gain power. And trying to be a sort of mini version of Nigel Farage is the least likely way forward. If I can give you one statistic, that amongst the 18 to 25-year-olds, the Conservatives have now got 5% support. That is a death warning for the Tory party.
Where do you think the Tory party, briefly, will be in a year from now?
I think it's impossible to foresee the next few months. But in the end, I believe the Tory party will reunite, because it is a party that has the sense and the historic experience to know that if you want to win a democratic majority, you do it from the centre ground and not from the extreme.
Lord Hazleton, thank you very much. Well, joining me now is Andrew Bridgen, a vocal Eurosceptic on the Conservative backbenches. Thanks for coming to the studio on a Sunday. You just heard him there. Lord Hazleton said, sack me.
I actually couldn't hear him.
So of course, well, he basically said, you know, if they want to sack me, they should sack me. Do you think he should be sacked?
Well, Lord Hazleton, unfortunately, is clearly in breach of Conservative Party rules. He's promoting another party in an election where there's a Conservative candidate standing. Anne Widdecombe announced she was standing for the Brexit Party. The next morning, she receives the letter saying she's expelled from the Conservative Party. In consistency, surely Lord Hazleton should be out of the Conservative Party, breaking the party's rules. I'm probably going to be writing to Brandon Lewis next week to ensure we have that consistency.
OK, so this is a man who's been with the Tory party since 1951. He has served 3 prime ministers. He was in the cabinet for 25 years. He is he's a Tory pillar. By calling for him to get sacked, to be removed from the Tory party, what does it say about the state of your party?
Well, Anne Widdecombe is a Tory pillar. When I first became the Conservative candidate in North West Leicestershire, and my seat was held by the Socialists, I remember that Anne Widdecombe was the first MP to come and speak on my behalf in the constituency. Probably the first Conservative function we'd had in probably 10 years in North West Leicestershire. So, I mean, wherever Anne Widdecombe is, she will be a Conservative. If you cut her in half, she's got the Conservative Party, but she's no longer a member. She broke the rules. She stood for another party. Lord Hazleton has clearly broken the rules. They must be fairly implemented.
But you're also a rebel. You've been voting against your Prime Minister consistently over this withdrawal agreement. So you're also, you're breaking the party rules. Shouldn't you be leaving too? Join Anne Widdecombe and the Brexit Party.
Well, what I've been voting for is what we promised the British people in our manifesto, that we'd leave the single market, the customs union, the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice, and that no deal was better than a bad deal. All those were in our manifesto. And if we're going to have a leadership that's going to go away from that, we can't be surprised at European elections, which we shouldn't be having, because we were told over 100 times by the Prime Minister we were leaving on the 29th of March, if our Conservative support is falling.
You heard Lord Hazleton there. He said, if your party moves too far to the right, if you lose the centre ground, you will not be a party of government again in the future.
Well,
is that OK with you?
Absolutely. We need to be a party of the centre-right. But most people are Democrats. They realise, whether they voted Leave or they voted Remain, that the democratic will of the British people at the referendum, the biggest ever political exercise we've ever had in the history of this country, was to leave the European Union. It might not be in London, but the rest of the country, there's a huge country out there where the majority of people voted to leave. They haven't changed their minds. And even people who, moderate Remainers, think, well, yes, we lost that, and we might want to have another vote of something else where, if I'm on the winning side, I would expect the government to deliver.
And in one line, would you ever consider an alliance, a coalition with the Brexit Party in Parliament if they got elected into Parliament?
We'll see how they do at the European elections. They're probably going to do very well. I think I said to Nigel Farage last week, you've got a choice, Nigel. You can either help us deliver Brexit or you can destroy the Conservative Party, but you can't do both. It's up to you.
But do you think an alliance with him is a possibility?
I think it's probably a necessity.
Andrew Bridgen, thank you very much indeed. Well, earlier I spoke to Sian Berry, the co-leader of the Green Party, and I began by asking her if the Greens would support Theresa May's withdrawal agreement if there was a second referendum. Listen.
I think so. I mean, the important thing is that we put something that's been mutually agreed by us and the EU to a public vote. You can't just be putting some fantasy out there. We certainly can't be putting no deal on the ballot paper. So it's got to be some kind of agreed deal versus Remain that goes out there for confirmation at the end of the process.
So would advise your sole MP in the House of Commons,
exactly,
Caroline, could make all the difference.
It's up to Parliament what happens.
Right, okay.
I think,
all right. But you would advise her,
that's
you would
more
say
or
to
less what we'd be looking
vote for this thing, as long as there's a confirmatory vote.
There has to be a confirmatory vote. This is the key thing. When you make a very big change, you measure twice and you cut once. And knowing what the final deal that we can agree with the EU is, putting that to a final vote, that's incredibly important. In fact, we've been saying that, Caroline Lucas has been saying that since the week after the referendum.
Can the EU solve the environmental problems?
There are many environmental problems that can only really be solved by international agreements. Things like air pollution, CO2, water pollution, taking the biodiversity out of the seas. They have to be done by international agreement, and Europe is a great forum for doing that.
Is there a danger, though, that, especially for your party, which is, centred on, a couple of central issues, the environment, that those issues will be taken up by other parties, by the Lib Dems, or by the Labour Party, or by the Tory Party, and that ultimately that renders you unnecessary?
It hasn't yet. Now, I've been a politician for quite a long time, and we've had waves before of a huge concern about the environment. And we've heard warm words from the other parties saying, yes, we'll do what you want. And then they might bring in something for a couple of years, and then they water it right down again. Look at the Conservatives cancelling loads and loads of really good green policies in recent years.
Extinction Rebellion want us to be carbon zero by 2025. Is that even realistic?
And they are protesting about there being a climate emergency. They think.
No, but do you think that 2025 is a realistic target?
Well, they're listening to the UN report that came out in October, which says that we only have until 2030 to get to the point where we're making sure we stay below 1.5 degrees. And that doesn't mean going over 1.5 degrees of warming and then back down. If we go over 1.5 degrees, we could kick off runaway global warming. But do you
think that is a realistic target?
I mean, we're saying we need to get to carbon neutrality by 2030. These are the motions that we're passing through councils, and we're making the strongest possible efforts to get to that level, because that is what the UN are telling us. Extinction Rebellion say do it sooner, and, they are right. We should be trying to do it as soon as possible. We should not be stinting on the action we take now, because we can't make it up later if we've already gone over that threshold.
Sian Berry, thank you very much indeed.